Welcome to We Digress with Joy and Jess. Join hosts and longtime friends Joy Simpson and Jess Perry as they tackle the stuff of life the only way they know how, with honesty, faith, and humor. This is We Digress with Joy and Jess. Hey everyone! Welcome to We Digress with Joy and Jess. I am Jess.
And so that would make me Joy. I don't know why I hesitated again. Last week I did so good.
We did so good. But you know what? I liked the dramatic pause. It worked. It worked for it.
Thank you very much. You know I'm down for the dramatics.
That's right. A little something, something. Just
a little bit.
Be drama.
You know, you always need a little drama and flair in your life.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. We just had our volunteer appreciation gala. No one else calls it a gala, but it's called the Golden G's. And so the fact that we don't call it a gala bothers my alliterative heart.
So I was going to ask you, was it like a play on the Golden Globes?
Kind of, yeah.
Was it, because, okay, that's what my mind went to when I saw the Golden G's. But then I saw some of the pictures. Some people were like gala-esque and some people were like rodeo-esque.
We got a real variety of folks.
So I was
at Gateway.
What is the event?
So everybody can come as they are, because some people, if we tell them they have to dress up, they're going to be like, absolutely not. I will not come. So we just say, if you want to dress up, feel free to dress up, but you don't feel like you have to.
I saw some men in some very fancy jackets.
So that's actually our friend, Mike, the one that you saw with the sequin jacket.
Yes.
Last year, he and our other friend Reese had the suits from Dumb and Dumber. You know, the orange and blue pastel suits. They had the full Dumb and Dumber suits. They showed up in those. There was some discussion about showing up in zoot suits this year, but I think Catherine, Mike's wife, was like, no, I would like to have one nice photo with you. So he came in a sequin tuxedo instead.
So, I'm used to things like that, especially when it comes to choir, because I have Rodney. Everybody, I've talked about Rodney before. Rodney, one year, was so offended. Actually, this past gospel concert, because we were doing solid colors. We're still dressing up. We're still doing church attire. We're still doing whatever. But our conductor decided everybody wears solid color, no flowers, no stripes, but beautiful colors, right? Rodney was like, this is so boring. He was so offended. But he still had a navy and gold patissoir jacket for the first half.
Because, as one does.
Because the girls didn't even change for the second half. I was like, if I would have known we were changing clothes, I would have brought another dress. That ain't no big deal. And for the second half of the men had on Rodney's wardrobe. They all changed into some kind of sparkly, patissoir, goldy, sequiny, bright colored blazer.
I love it.
I was like, did Rodney bring his whole closet? What is going on?
You're like, so, I missed this memo.
We all come out for the second half and we're like, what the?
We were big, not fancy.
Right. I mean, of course, everybody thinks most of my clothes are fancy, but so here's the thing. You tell a mixed choir of African-American, Hispanic, Asian, and Caucasian people to wear church attire, okay?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're going to get very different.
To church most often is not what my counterpart, wonderful, lovely friends wear, though they do their best to get fancy. So we have to specifically say, dress like you're, and this is going to sound so bad, dress like you're going to black church on Easter. We had to
It's not just come as you are church. It's you best show up. Yeah.
Yes. And if Rodney would have his way, we would all be in Easter hats. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not singing for 3 hours in a hat. It's just not going to happen.
There's a level of heat around the brim involved that I can't co-sign.
And then we are under lights.
Yeah. And then it's weird shadows. It's
No. So we just got our music for our holiday. We're doing, I want to say Bach, but I feel like I'm wrong. We are doing, we're doing the English version of whatever it is. because I think it's actually German. Um,
Yeah, Paul.
I'm already like, my life is getting too busy. I don't know what to do. Okay, so it is, I want to be correct. So I'm sure he's going to have some kind of vote on what we wear. Oh, we're doing Bach's cantata. I was right, we are doing Bach. Yes.
Nice. I
It's in
apologize if you
German.
just heard like a weird barky cough thing. That is Lucky the pup.
Oh, is that Lucky?
Yeah, I took him to the vet yesterday. He has a not collapsed, but collapsing trachea.
Mm.
And so it's a kind of a common thing with little dogs like that. And so we're trying to figure out some solutions because the only option she gave us was to do hydrocodone, which is like a cough
They have
suppressant.
doggy
Doggy
hydrocodone?
hydrocodone. And I'm like, if I can avoid dealing with the controlled substance and it only comes in a liquid,
And it's liquid.
and that's hard he doesn't do the liquids well. He doesn't appreciate it. We had a liquid on his gabapentin for a while, and that was a whole nightmare.
They have doggy gabapentin?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shut your mouth. I take gabapentin.
Oh, it's been great for him. He's like a whole new dog. So
That's amazing.
yeah. Well, he started the gabapentin because he had a couple seizures, we thought. And he had seizures. And so gabapentin is really good for neurological issues as well as pain, right? That's why it's prescribed. And so they give it to dogs to help raise their seizure threshold and to like all that kind of stuff. So he hasn't had one since then. He kind of did. But what we think it actually is not a true seizure. We think he gets like an upset stomach because he's a small dog and small dogs have finicky little stomachs. And so he'll throw up and then he will have like a gap in air. And so then he'll kind of seize a little bit as a result of that. So it's not like he's having the seizure. And it could have been a pain thing. Like he was in a lot of pain. And so the pain kind of just shot an extra electrical impulse up the spine. And that's why he had the seizure. Hence the gabapentin. He's an expensive little dog.
He is.
But also
medicine is not cheap.
No, it is not. I mean, and it was $300 at the vet yesterday. So it's like,
and then he went to the groomers today.
Yeah. Well, the reason he went to the groomers is because part of what makes can exacerbate the coughing from the narrowed trachea is heat and humidity. And so when the dogs get overheated, and of course we live in hot, humid Georgia,
right? Yeah.
Now we're on the tail end of all that, which is great. But he was fluffy. He was overdue for his groom. And so he was super fluffy. So I had to, thankfully, they could get me in. They had a cancellation today, so they could get me in today. Normally I'd have to wait a week and a half. So I was really concerned. So when they had the spot, I was like, I'll take it.
Take it right now.
So he's naked. He's a naked dog.
We don't mind your sneezes and coughs, Lucky.
Yeah, so if you hear all his random hacking, we're working on getting him a little better, but
it's okay. Feel better, guy. Lucky. Poor little guy. I know. It's interesting how similar, not saying that dogs and humans are exactly the same, but they have some very interesting similarities where it makes you think, God, what was in your mindset when you created this particular, animal, creature, human? What were you thinking? Why are these two similar and we're not similar to the other? Those are where my mind goes. Just the amazement of God's creation. I'll just put that.
Well, it's the variety of it, you see all these different things, because you stop and think about it. Like God could have been very utilitarian in creation. It could have been very like, all right, here are these two plants so we can pollinate, two different plants. And here are these, just here's how avocados grow. And it's just like a tree, right? And instead, God creates this incredible variety of creation with trees and beautiful colors and plants and we see in crazy colors. We see all the colors of Rodney's mini jackets, right? We see
he may have one of many colors,
right? And he creates this beautiful variety in the people, even in the humans that he creates, all these different shades, all these different
Exactly. That's what I was
personalities,
thinking. Yeah.
all of it. And it's like, it frustrates me so much because we take this thing that God has given us as this beautiful gift, this variety, this
Hmm.
the color, the spice, the sight, the smell, all
Right.
of our
Right.
different varied experiences, and we make them a thing to fight over and against.
Man, it's mind blowing, isn't it? When it's something to truly appreciate
Yeah.
versus being upset. And I look at things on like social media and like TikTok and some of the conversations and stitches I see, and I'm just like, it's wonderful when someone, I think it's a fine line between appropriation and appreciation, and like
Yeah.
you have people fighting over that too. And it blows my mind. um I was really excited this year, and this is going to sound so crazy, to get skin tone crayons and
Hmm.
skin tone
Yeah.
um
Band-aids?
construction
Oh,
paper,
conditioner.
because when I normally am doing art, my black and brown kids, they don't have anything,
Mm.
but neither do my Caucasian and Asian students who are a little more yellow. My, skin tones are different, and so I was constantly saying, well, just use this brown. Well, some of my brown kids are not the same shade of the regular Crayola brown, and
Yeah.
so then I would have some of my Caucasian kids going, well, Miss Joy, what do I use? And I used to hate doing this, but I'm like, just use the peach, babe, because I don't know what other color
Right?
we can
Right.
find. So I have this variety of skin tone colors now for them to color with, for us to do art projects when they're making themselves. They can use the construction paper that's for themselves. We have Latin History Month coming up. My aide this year is Miss Gonzalez, and she was so happy to find herself as an adult a color in that set of papers that matched her. She
Yeah.
was thrilled. So I'm like, the wonderment of these types of things, these make me excited. Unfortunately, it does not make everyone excited to see the beauty inside and out of everybody else.
Yeah. I
And
don't
that
understand that.
that brings sadness. And I think I'm not saying I know God like that. I mean, I know him, but like, he didn't tell me this or anything. But I feel like it brings him sadness. I feel like when we are fighting over his creation, the beauty of it, I feel like it doesn't make him happy. That's not what he intended for us. He didn't
Right.
intend for
No, I mean,
that.
all of our discord and all of our circumstances in life that were not God's plan. You mean, if we
Right.
want to know what God's will was, it was the perfection of
It was
Eden.
Genesis 1
Yeah.
and 2.
It was communion, direct
Yeah.
communion with his creation, right?
Yeah.
And when we have that direct communion, if it works the way that it's supposed to, we all live in like this perfect harmony, like a Coca-Cola
Right.
commercial.
Right.
Because our focus is not so much on fighting each other, it would be on him, you know?
Yeah. That's
And
true. When you focus
it's
on him, it takes away the disdain of others. It helps you
yeah,
love better.
it
It helps
should.
you see better. It should. When I am very careful about not only what I say on this platform, but how I say things, because I don't want anybody to ever come back to either one of us and make us feel like we are one-sided. We both
Right.
are, we make sure, I believe, that we have a good consensus and perspective on the things that we're talking about, and that we're not closed-minded if someone doesn't agree. But one thing I won't disagree or have a discussion about is hate. Hate is not acceptable, in my opinion. Hate is not acceptable in the kingdom of God. It's not acceptable when you claim that you're a believer. It's not acceptable. Hate is the one thing that I will stand on my soapbox and declare that if you were a believer, you should not hate or
Nope.
disdain or
Mm-hmm.
despise anyone, no matter what culture, no matter their color, no matter even their religion,
Right.
right? They
Right.
may not
Absolutely.
even be our religion. We're still called to love them.
Absolutely.
We're still called to love them. I
Mm-hmm.
have a coworker right now where I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. I'm like, I don't know if God is asking me to like mentor this person, but it's a lot some days, because she believes in God, she believes in Jesus, but she also talks about mindfulness and saging and, things like that. And I've tried to explain to her saging and Jesus, no bueno.
They don't. They don't.
They don't,
Yeah.
because saging is fight me if you want to, it's witchcraft. When you're saging, that's not, and I've had people say, well, the Bible used incense, blah 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 blah. Yes, people in the Bible did use incense. That was the only thing they can use to help distract the scent of the things that were going on. You
Yeah.
have to understand, there is livestock. Most people at least had 4 or 5 goats and cows and chickens and things like that. And it was, the burnt offerings were Old Testament. It was not, something that was declared by Christ. Till you go, he said you can anoint with oil, but don't anoint your house with sage. Just don't. And that I
Well,
will argue with you on.
well, because again, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the whole idea of sage is that there's some kind of property of sage that cleanses from spirits, right?
Yes.
So the
Yes.
difference between sage and like incense is incense was an act of worship. Incense was something that was done, a tool used to worship God.
Right.
Sage is something used in place of God.
Right.
And
Right.
so that there's a very specific difference about that.
Right.
Like they don't
Right.
have place. Now,
And when you're called to love and you're seeing things through the eyes of God, what I could do, like, that's wrong, and I don't go about it that way. I listen
right,
to what she has to say, and then I give what my perspective is. She respects it, you
right.
know. She's growing, she's learning. At this point, I just think she's searching, because
Oh
she's
yeah.
going through a lot in her life, and so she's searching. And so what you don't want to do as a believer is make someone else who has a different concept or understanding of God, religion, whatever, different. Because when your mind is set on Christ and the things of Christ, you do share who you are. You do share the gift of Christ with others, but you don't browbeat them with it, and you don't condemn them for what they have going on. I have friends who are Muslim who respect who I am, and I respect what they believe. I have friends that, are Jewish. Again, that is not only their religion, but is their culture.
Right.
I make sure that I understand enough about it to have conversations with them. And I know some believers who adopt Jewish traditions into their, matter of fact, my father was one. He and his friends, one of the guys who helped with sound and did a lot of the videography for the memorial service, he had sent me some pictures to show of, a few Friday nights out of the month. They would do a Seder. They would
Mm.
do um, a thing together, and they would look at the similarities between um, New Testament Christianity and Old Testament, and how they expressed how, they did a whole research. And so they did
Yeah.
that. They would do Shabbat dinners on
Mm-hmm.
occasion. And I love Shabbat dinner, by the way. I'm a huge fan of it. Like, when I get, hopefully, prayerfully get married, I would love to incorporate once in a while a Shabbat dinner, because I think it's amazing, and the practices and the prayer behind it, all of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I love it. So I think that we need to also be, in order to talk to someone about God and Jesus, we should be knowledgeable about the things that they know as well. Because the truth of the matter is, there are atheists who know the Bible more better than some Christians, because they learn it to dispute you.
Right.
They learn it to argue. There are other religions that do the same,
Yeah.
So I just, if we go back to the original intent of God and his creation, our minds would change and shift in the way we have conversations, and the way we talk to people, and how we handle life's ups and downs. Not saying that every day is going to be perfect. Not saying that living that way is easy.
No,
Not
for
saying
sure.
that fear won't creep up, not saying that doubt won't creep up, not saying you won't have an attitude because you're not having a great day. I'm not
Right.
saying any of that, but mindset change is a huge factor in how we handle life and how we go through and how we represent Christ, because no matter where we are, no matter who we are, that's who we're supposed to represent,
Mm-hmm.
no
Absolutely.
matter what.
Yeah. I was making the comment to John, probably last week sometime. And I said, does it feel like, and this is because I was seeing this on TikTok, people were joking about it, but I was like, does it feel like in 2020 we like entered some kind of alternate timeline? And like our world is so different in the last 3 years. It feels
It
like
really
it's
is.
just such a different place. And people are angrier and, because
Mhm.
we're in this like really, you know, economically challenging. Everything is so
Yeah,
expensive. Gosh, I went grocery shopping this morning and I was just like, it was so expensive.
I don't even want to know.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's just the
coffee
two of you,
creamer.
really, yeah,
I
yeah,
bought coffee creamer and it was $6 for the slightly larger coffee thing. And I was just like, good gravy.
right. Even
You know?
cereal. I mean, cereal's
Oh, yeah.
like, you know, insanely priced for a box of, I was looking at a box of like a Raisin Bran for my grandmother.
Yeah.
Even the small box was like $5.89, and I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
when did cereal become so high?
Well, stuff that used to cost me $2 is $5 now. Like it's just
Right.
so expensive to do anything. And people are on edge because I'm sorry, say what you will about the mandates, whatever your belief on them was, you can't keep people in their homes for a year and not expect people to go a little stir crazy. And I think we're
Yeah.
just seeing the repercussions of that now in our society of people who have kind of forgotten what it's like to be kind and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And the antidote for that as Christians is to be a reflection of Jesus. Like it's to be connected to him in such a way as to reflect his heart and his attitude and his
Mm-hmm.
mindset and his behaviors, right? Out
Mm-hmm.
in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But gosh, Christians we love everybody loves a good fight, and we want to sit
Right.
there and poke at people and it's like
And you poke a bear too many times, what's going to happen?
yeah. Well,
You
and
know?
and the thing is, like, Jesus doesn't say they will know you by the fact that you're right. He says they will know you by your love.
By your love. Yeah.
And again, love is not permissive, and love has standards, and love can disagree. Love can do all of those things, but there is a way to have
Mm-hmm.
standards and disagree about things that
Right.
still honors God. You
Right.
know?
And it can be Christian on Christian fighting. Like
Oh yeah.
it's not just us fighting the people, or, whatever. Like it can be believers. It can be people in the same church,
Oh
like
yeah.
because of when your mindset, it's when you set your mind on things above, it is a different way to think and live. And I will probably say this 90 times before we finish talking. I had a meeting with my pastor the other night, and he is at a point where he's like, we can't focus on who doesn't like anymore,
Right.
because there are always going to be those people who don't like. Let us preach to the people who want to hear. Let us preach and talk to the people that want to grow, because at the end of the day, we have to keep moving. We have to keep growing. We have to keep changing, because ministry doesn't stay stagnant. If
Right.
ministry stays stagnant, it becomes stale and you're not effective, right?
Right.
But there are people who don't value or appreciate change
Mm-hmm.
and want to hold up progress. And his whole point was, we cannot cater to them anymore.
Right.
We we can't, because what's happening is we're going in a cycle of non-productivity, and it's messing up the growth and enhancing kingdom, right? We are supposed to be, you know, and he shared his heart of discouragement, because he said there's sometimes he looks in the audience and some of the faces of some of the people. And I'm like, how are you sitting in the house of the Lord and you are mad and
Mm-hmm.
you are angry and you are just attitude and causing conflict in the
Right.
body. Like, how are you even comfortable with that as someone who claims that they love Jesus? Because Jesus does not, my spirit, the Holy Spirit that lives inside of me, I can't sit comfortably in chaos. I can't sit comfortably in conflict, because it is not what we are supposed to be. We weren't made really for that, right?
Right.
We weren't really made for that. And so when I've come to the house of the Lord and I'm struggling or I'm having a bad day, that's when I allow worship, right, to
Mm-hmm.
wash over me. Those are the Sundays where I may not sing that day. And you don't need to know why I'm not singing, but I may not sing that day. Or I might step back from media because I need to take a step back and hear God and worship God and
Mm-hmm.
focus on God. That's what I do when I'm having a moment where, I can't tell you what to do, but my thing is this: don't come in church and then still try to fight. It's not okay. It's not.
Right. It's
It's
not.
not.
Well,
And
and
change is going, the only thing constant in the world, India Irie said this years and years ago in one of her albums, the only thing constant in the world is change. And if you read my book, I am not a huge proponent of change. I have learned and have grown into a place of understanding why change is necessary. It still may take me a day or two, but I'm like, mind wise, I'm like, let's go. Okay,
right.
we can do it. And change is inevitable.
Yeah. Change is inevitable. And I think the thing that most people are doing when they're coming into, I'm gonna play well intentioned, right? I think
Hmm.
most people are well intentioned. I think they're simply misguided because
I can agree with that.
people think that their way is right and they're gonna fight for their right to party. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But they're gonna
Right.
fight for what they think is right. But they are thinking in terms that theirs is the only way that is right. And when it comes to church, they're having to defend God because obviously their way is correct, is the correct way to worship.
Right.
And
The
and I'm
correct way to
sorry,
do a sermon,
exactly, right?
you know?
Because it's the way that they like, it's the way that they engage. And if
Hmm.
it's not that, then it must be wrong, right? Because we all have,
Right.
and we all do this. I think
Hmm.
the difference is from people who approach it in a healthy fashion is people who understand that that may not be my cup of tea, but maybe it's for somebody else today. What can I
Hmm.
get out of it? And how can I be a part of this? Right? That's the healthy thing to do when it comes to any kind of conflict, especially in the church when it's style preferences and things like that, like, or
Yeah.
methodology preferences, or,
Yeah.
if we have to protect, we get crotchety about our things because
Yeah.
that's what we like. And Jesus did not come to give us a church that we like. Jesus came to transform who we are. He came to transform the world by giving us eternal salvation,
Hmm.
right? He came to transform the world through the power of his death, burial, and resurrection. And because of that, we have the ability to go out and do likewise. We
Yeah.
get to go out and live out our faith. And in doing so, living out our faith will hopefully transform the world. But it's not because we fight and claw and scrape and
Right.
moan and grumble and complain and
Right.
argue and write anonymous cards to the pastor telling him how wrong he was, or,
Right.
all this kind of stuff. And here's the thing. If there's something about your church that you don't like that isn't a sin issue, and let's be clear, let's be clear, like, you cannot like something because it's a sin issue. And if it's an actual sin issue, then you
Then,
should
yeah.
address it in
Yes.
love, right?
Yes.
But if it's just a thing that you don't like, that's a preference. Okay.
There are
If there's a
many
lot of
churches.
things that you don't like about it and that's a preference, and there's another church, I'm not saying church hop, but I'm saying if this is not a place that you are connecting, then bless and leave them in peace and move to a church where you can feel that you pour in. Or
Hmm.
just say, this is a place where I've built community. This is a place where I've got affection and relationships and all this kind of stuff. And I know that this
Hmm.
season of the church maybe is focusing on people who are different than me. You and I are getting to be that age where church is not, we've up until your 40s, church caters to you, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
church wants to bring in the young people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it's our season to step into leadership and to step into growth
Mm-hmm.
and to foster those that are
Mm-hmm.
coming behind us.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great meeting last week talking about our young adults, the 18 to 30s that are post high school. And in our context, maybe a few of them will go to college, but a lot more of them will go into, working at Gulfstream is a big employer out here, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that age has such unique needs, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
in your early 20s, you're finding yourself, you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pressure, and your brain is just processing all this stuff because, our society has built this culture where in your early 20s, we kind of go, okay, and we launch you and you're trying to figure everything out. And so we were talking about what our students needed, and we actually had a representative of the youths on the table. And he's a good guy, good kid. And I'm older now, so I can call them all kids, right? That's the rule. Like you hit 40, you're allowed to call everybody in their 20 kids. But we were sitting there talking about, what they need. And it was a bunch of well-intentioned, but I don't, a bunch of 40-year-olds talking about what these kids need for service. And at one point I just had the thought, we've got one right here. He knows what he needs. Like, I know he doesn't know all of what he needs because he's 20, but like, none of us knew what we all needed at 20. But he's got a pretty good idea of what the kids are looking for and resonating with. So let's go with what he's saying, instead of trying to have us come in and do that. And I think so oftentimes we just want to make it over in our own image, especially in church.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
now is our time to not be selfish, as maturity is supposed to breed selflessness, and maturity in faith is supposed to breed selflessness, because that is the reflection of God. And so kindly, with all the love in my heart that I have for people who have hills that they die on in churches and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
it's not about you.
Thank you.
Like, it's not about you. It's not about what you want.
It's not. And like she said, if it's a sin issue, then yes,
absolutely.
address it.
Right. Sin issue, address it all day, every day.
Go to the proper whatever channels you got to go through. If it's because you're just not connecting anymore with the ministry and you've been there, like she said, I'm not a big proponent about church hopping, but if you're not bound to a place forever, if that's not where God is leading you or calling you to be.
Sometimes God shuffles the deck.
He does. But if you, like she said, if you feel as if you have helped build ministry and you dig in and do what's right and hear out, because another thing to me, when we are bucking against leadership, that means you're not trusting that God has called them to do what they're doing. God has not led them to the correct decisions in leadership. I'll say, and the reason why I'm saying that is I know in my own experience, I am having to see and hear and be a part of conversations where some people have been put in ministry or being questioned, and not because they're not called to be there, it's because of age or because of not liking the person. Okay. That's not okay.
Right.
Hence why he said, we are going to preach to who's there. We are going to shepherd who is there. We are going to love everyone who is there, but we are going to make sure that the ones who truly want to be here and want to be a part and want to hear and we're going to cater to them. We're no longer going to cater to the ones bucking against the system. If it was good reason, then shoot, buck against the system. I'm a rebel. Like, I get it. But in certain instances, not like
she's a rebel with a cause.
Yeah. But it breaks my heart, though, to see the conflict in the world and then that same conflict in the church. And I agree with the conversation you had with John, that those few years, it really felt like the Infinity War of Avengers, where everything
It
snapped,
does.
where
Yeah. And
it
yeah.
snapped, and it's just life was not the same, and it has not been the same
Mm-hmm.
since. And yes, we are restoring in some areas, but there are a lot of places that are still desolate, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of places, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, um, that are not the same. People have lost a lot in those few years, not just materially, but parents, grandparents. Two of my mother's friends in the pandemic lost their husbands,
Mm-hmm.
one to COVID, one to cancer, you know, and it was devastating.
Yeah.
They're both still extremely devastated. My mom and I were talking the other day, because grief is disrespectful and just comes out of nowhere.
Yep.
And she was saying, one of my aunts who lost her husband was like, it just comes out of nowhere. And she doesn't like it because she can't control it. She
Mm-hmm.
can't, there's no
Yeah.
timeline. She doesn't, and my mom's like, there's no timeline. Your heart and everything is going to feel that probably until the Lord takes you home, because
Absolutely.
you loved him. That was your husband. And so we have gone through this huge season of loss. We've lost minds because of politics. We've lost, people have lost relationships and friendships because
Yeah.
of politics. Um, we have lost our sense of identity of how we should be, because it's like we're relearning, we're regrowing. We didn't have a lot of activity for almost 2 years where
Yeah.
we were in our homes. Like, like you said, it makes you go a little stir crazy
Yeah. Yeah.
as well. And it's like you open the door, let everybody out, and everybody's like cats, just like, wandering around, not knowing exactly what to do, because life is not the same.
No.
Life is not the same. But that does not ever change who God is
Right.
and who God has called us to be. So, in my opinion, and I don't say this rudely, hear my heart, with that even in mind, we still have to snap out of it and get back to our identity in Christ, because that is how we're going to navigate all the other things going around in our life. If you don't have that foundation of being found in him and remember who you are in him, then no, you're not going to know who you are. You are going to feel like you're lost. You are going to feel like, everything's going to make you angry or piss you off, for lack of a better word. Everything's going to, be an issue. Every person at work is going to get on your nerves. Yeah, they are. But when you have that foundation, it doesn't seem or feel the same. And you know how to navigate, you know how to talk, you know how to speak in love to those situations. Even when there's arguing going on around you, don't join in the chaos. Be the change that they need to understand and hear. It doesn't have to be this way.
Right. As Paul puts it, as far as is possible, be at peace with everybody. Right?
Yeah.
Whenever you can, and whenever you can, be at peace. Like,
Yeah.
and bring peace with you. Like, I went through a season in 2020, in 2021, and even for a little bit in 2022, where I was very angry. I mean, very angry. And it was unresolved trauma. It was unprocessed grief, I think, in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unprocessed grief from like our fertility losses and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And anger at the situation. I had been very badly hurt at a church, and we've talked about that before. And
Mm-hmm.
just life had, and then put on top of all of that, which had happened pre-COVID, and then in the middle of that, then it becomes, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, you're stuck at home.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't all I was left with was just this, and
Mm-hmm.
and coming out of that in the next few years, and still really processing that and realizing that part of it, was still trying to physically recover from stuff that had happened 3 years ago that my body never bounced back for, because thanks late 30s, we're not as flexible and as malleable as we were in our 20s, right?
Right.
But it wasn't until I made the decision. I was like, I can't be angry like this anymore. I
Yeah.
can't be angry like this anymore. You know, my dad once said that anger is unmet expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But more recently, I've heard that anger means a boundary has been violated.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the combination of those two things, right? Because we have an expectation that our boundary is going to be held, that this thing that has happened, that this is our expectation, right? Here's this boundary that I don't want you to cross because it's unhealthy. But then someone crosses it, and you not only have you violated my expectation, but you violated my boundary, and that I can't. And so that's when anger manifests.
Right.
And so anger can serve a purpose for us in helping us to like navigate a little bit, I think. But also anger can be taken too far, right? Jesus says, be angry, but don't sin. It's okay to be angry because anger is a reaction to something real that's happened.
Right.
But the response after the reaction is what the standard we're held to, right? Like, how are we responding? Is that the first thing that we do? So if you find yourself as someone who is being angry all the time, and I say this as someone who has that tendency, right? I was very angry as a kid. Like, that was what I was taught as a kid because my grandparents were Syrian and Irish and loved a good fight. Like, that was our family language, was arguing. But so I grew up with this idea of argument and being argumentative and angry and stuff like that. And so when I say we have to unlearn that habit as the response, I know I say it from a place of, I get it. It's hard to do. But how we respond to things that aren't the way we want isn't. I would say this. I would say that in the instance, like, say we've got a church situation, something's not the way that we want, and we don't like how something has happened. We don't like how the preacher has preached. We don't like the style of worship music. We don't like the volume of worship music. There's too much haze, whatever it is that you don't like. It's okay to not like it. That's fine. Your preference is your preference. That's cool. That's fine. No problem. But it's what you do with that feeling of dislike. That's what's important. The response,
what you do with it.
Again, the reaction is fine. The response is your responsibility. Right?
I like that. That's true. That's true.
How we respond to those things. And so there was a situation that happened just yesterday, actually, where there was something that a concern that I raised. And I said, and here's why. Here's my concern. I just want to make sure that, that you guys are hearing that this is a concern. This is something that I am seeing that you may not be seeing, because from my perspective, this could be an issue. And the feedback that I got was, we understand your perspective. We've seen what you've seen. We don't think it's an issue that we need to address. And so it's fine. And I have two choices. I can be like, well, no, you need to hear me. You need to listen to me, and you need to do something about this. Or I can say, okay, I did my part. I raised the alarm and I said, hey, have you considered X and Y and Z? And they said, yeah, and we think X and Y and Z. And it's like, okay.
And that'll happen sometimes.
Right. And so if you have a concern about the volume of worship, if you have a concern about, I don't know, what color suit pastor wore, if you have a concern about,
not what color suit, but people
be out here wilding. So
they are
like, it's okay to have that concern, but weigh that concern against, is this a hill that I need to die on?
Right.
Is this mission critical for the church? Is this a sin issue? Or is it just a matter of my personal preference? And if it's a matter of my personal preference and it's a consistent issue, then maybe you can have a nice conversation about someone and say, hey, the volume seems really loud today? Was it louder than normal? Have that kind of conversation in
Right.
humility. Because a number of
Right.
times I've had somebody come up and, my Apple Watch says it's 145 decibels. Well, I thank you for bringing that. I know you're concerned for your ears. However, let's talk about why the Apple Watch is incorrect. Here's the thing, just as an aside, as a digression. If your Apple Watch tells you something is really loud, great, that's nice. However, Apple Watches are not properly rated and weighted to measure decibels long term in an environment. And it's not so much the a singular moment in time, it is long term. So anyways, your Apple Watch is a great tool, but it is
I
not
haven't
the
had
most
that
accurate.
that happen. That's funny. I'm sorry.
Oh, on the church sound tech thing, when that feature first came out, oh my gosh, techs everywhere losing their mind. Is this A rated or C rated?
That's funny. But see, and it shows you, and I'm not calling anybody petty, but it shows you how minute some of these things can be when there's a larger thing at risk. Now, something Jessica said that is important. If you're dealing with some trauma and some things and things like that, especially in these last few years, a lot of people who did not know that they had certain, the pandemic brought out things in people they didn't know they had, good and bad. Okay. Some people didn't know they had anxiety issues until the pandemic, right? Some people didn't know how creative they were though until the pandemic. So there was like a lot of different things. And so if you are someone who feels like, especially, everything's irritating you, everything's causing issues, especially when you're in church and ministry, I suggest talking to someone because there's a root to the issue that may not be what you think the root is. And I had to, once I stepped into a bigger role recently in ministry in the last few months, I had to look at how guarded I was because I had been hurt in ministry, in the particular ministry, by some of the same people I was working with. And when I wasn't working with anyone, I was fine. When I started getting a team again, that's when my issues began. And it wasn't that they did anything to me in this new moment, but every time we would have a meeting or a conversation, my mind went back to what they did previously and how that hurt and how that bothered me and how those things eventually made me want to not only be away from that particular ministry. I didn't want to do ministry at all. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I had to, with my therapist and Jessica and my mother, figure out that it was an internal trauma from the past that was hindering me. And the thing that God showed me was, if you have changed in your life and you want people to accept the change that you have made and the growth that you have, shouldn't you give that grace to others? People are allowed to change and grow, and that's a good thing. And since that has come into my mind, I approach conversations differently. I approach our meetings differently. I approach the people differently in that group because I know that when there's an issue, I need to check me first. Then if there's an actual issue, then address it.
Absolutely. Because here's the thing. Sometimes people will show you who they are. They can't hide their stuff. And not every person is a safe person to be around or to be in relationship with or to partner with or to work with. Like some people are just not safe. However, the healthy response is to ask the question of yourself first, right? Before we go ahead and assign blame or fault or anything to another person solely, the first thing that we have to do is look internal and make sure and check ourselves. Because if we don't check ourselves, we may in fact wreck ourselves. And so the first thing that we have to do is check ourselves. I like how I snuck that in and Joy like caught it and her face changed and she was just like, you did not just do that.
One thing about us, we're both corny, and so that made sense to me.
Yeah. But no, I mean, like the first thing that we do is check ourselves. And the reason I say that
it's very important.
The reason I say that too is because having been through situations where I was being gaslighted and like genuinely gaslighted, like saying things that didn't happen that had absolutely happened, like rewriting history, like that kind of gaslighting, not just like TikTok gaslighting. Having been in those situations with people, the thing that they have that you do as a response to that is that you begin to doubt yourself. You begin to doubt that your perception of events was accurate. And so sometimes it's really easy to think that you're crazy and that you're really the problem. That's what happens when gaslighting happens. And so the question I always ask is, that is a healthy response. Questioning yourself is a healthy response. Asking what your part in the role, you know, in the situation scenario is a healthy response. It's a biblical response. It's if you stop asking yourself, what role did I play in this? And immediately assigning blame to other people, that you begin to get imbalanced. Now, I'm not saying that you are the cause of all your problems, like you, generally you people, right? I'm not saying that we cause all of our own problems, because let's be real, we cause a lot of our own problems. But we are not, other people play into that story as well.
Right.
But refusing to even own, to even ask what part I play in it, and then own and change that part, that is narcissistic behavior. And that has no place in the church. That has no place, right? So here's the thing. If you want to not be a narcissist, admit that you are wrong.
Bingo.
And do some internal, like genuine work. Not just manipulative self introspection, right? But like actual introspection. What can I change? How can I grow? What can I do? And then here's the thing. It has to be in balance, right?
Right. And it has to be in honesty, because there are times where when you evaluate yourself and you can ask yourself, or you can even, my therapist has sent me like we're on a therapy pause. So she sent me some papers, journaling prompts and some evaluation forms for me to do as introspective for myself. And as I looked at a lot of the questions, I had to be very, very honest, because if you're not honest with yourself when you're trying to do work on internally and on your mind, body, and spirit, then it won't accomplish anything if you're not completely real with the situation and how you are feeling and what you do, your part in it, not focusing on someone else's part in the situation. You have to look at you, for real, look at you.
Right. And that's maturity, and that's spiritual maturity, right? That is knowing the word and applying it to yourself first and then to others. It's sort of the airplane mask idea, right? Like, take care of your own self first before you help other people. Take the plank out of your own eye before you address the speck in your brother's. Like, deal with your own sin first. Clean up your own house first. And then you've done the work internally, that then you can actually be of genuine help to somebody who is needing that, because you've been through the healing on your own, right?
Absolutely.
And if we're not willing to do that as a church and as a people, and our first response is to just be angry and point fingers and be like, well, you're wrong because of this, and you're wrong this, and I'm offended this, and that's not spiritual maturity. That's a desire to build our own kingdom and to make idols of our own image.
Right. One of the things I make sure I say to myself is this kingdom minded, or is this religion? Is this tradition? Even when it's me thinking something, is it kingdom minded? Is it religion, religious or traditional? And sometimes it could be both of some things, tradition and kingdom. It could be, but I try to check myself because at the end of the day, like I tell my students, you are responsible for what you do
Mm-hmm.
and for what you say. And I can't say you represent God, but I say to them, you represent your family, your mother and father when you are here at school.
Right.
If they would not be happy with how you are talking to someone, how you are acting, what you are doing, then maybe you're not doing the right thing. And our kids have this thing about getting in each other's business. And I'm like, y'all too young to be having business, but I'm going to let you have your little business. But I constantly tell people, if it has nothing to do with you, stay out of it.
Right.
Because then what happens is you get involved and you get in trouble because you weren't even supposed to be involved in it in the first place.
Right.
And I have one student who he is a Christian, and his grandmother and I speak a lot. He does like Christian mime dancing and things like that. And when he acts out, I will pull to the side. And his grandmother is totally fine with that. We have had conversations. I will pull to the side and ask him, does this honor God? No. Then why did you do that? I said, you can't be out there ministering to people and dance, because he understands what he's doing as far as his ministry. Like, he's already, but then he has the thing where he still wants to be like the other kids.
Right.
And I told him, and I said this in front of his grandmother. I said, I am sorry that you cannot be like the other kids. You have a gift that God has given you that you have to protect. Mm-hmm. And so when you act out of character, that concerns me and Mimi, because that's what he calls grandma. It concerns me and Mimi because we know what and who you are. You can't get on a stage and minister to people and dance and then act like this at school. It is completely not acceptable. I said, and when I'm not watching you and Mimi's not watching you, who is watching you? Jesus. Yeah. So I know, I get it. I wanted to be like all the other kids, and I always felt out of place. I don't want you to feel like that. I don't like that you feel like that. But I do want you to understand that who you are is greater than anything that you do here. Your talent, I use them in my shows and whatever, but that's not just who you are. Mm-hmm. You are someone God uses often. He dances all around Los Angeles, big stages. He was called to Texas this year to do a huge McDonald's gospel fest thing where he was on the stage with some of the biggest gospel artists. You have a purpose that is greater than your friends. Right. You getting in their business and trying to fix things that don't have nothing to do with you. So I have that conversation with him because of who he is and because I have that understanding with his grandmother. Any other way I show it at school, is because I have to just show it through my actions, through my love. Even though I can't be like, God does not like this. I have parents that when I tell them their kid acted up, they'll talk about God. But because I work for LA Unified, I cannot. Right. And at the end of the day, those are my thoughts. The same thing I say to them. Is it kingdom-minded? Does it have really anything to do with you? Because some stuff I don't need to be involved in. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Stay out of it. And it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. When we appreciate and understand the identity that we have in Christ and what God created us for, that mindset allows us to walk not only in purpose, but walk in love wherever we go, and to handle situations in a better manner.
Right. Absolutely.
This was not what we were supposed to talk about today, by the way, but this is where God took us.
That's right. Digressions all the way.
All the way.
All the digressions all the time.
Excuse me, I feel like I have it's my medical insurance keeps texting me and I'm like, I'll get back to you in a second. I hate that certain businesses are starting to have text messages now. Like,
well, it's funny. We have a text service that we use at the church to text people about events and things like that. Or like our men's ministry uses it predominantly. And I texted out an invitation to our Golden G's, to some volunteers, and some of our more seasoned saints thought it was spam and blocked the number. And I was like, okay, no, you can click the link. It's fine. I know. Yeah. It had the Gateway logo on it.
Listen, I know the seasoned saints. I get questions all the time. How come? Because we did a whole service Sunday about social media and the enhancement and what it does for church. And well, I don't know how to. One of the mothers in our church, she has a phone, and I'm trying to tell her all you have to do is touch this right here, then whatever. She's like, oh, but then all this stuff comes up where those are all the people whose friends request you've accepted. So they're just sharing.
Yeah, that's okay.
She's one of our mothers. Like she's and she's not super old or anything, but this technology is really different for them. And so it was interesting having that social media Sunday because we had so many grumbles about why we have this and what do we do this and why are you always telling us to like and share and this. So we did a Sunday about it. We took our time with a social media Sunday, and the oohs and ahs and the ohs that I heard throughout certain aspects of the service, I was like, okay, thank you. But it was helpful, It was helpful, but some of them are still like, now they're like, we want to do it, but now you got to show me how to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny to me because I am super techie. Like I always have been. My dad loved gadgets, and
She has been since
like
I've known her.
From a young age, like I just loved playing with gadgets. My first computer was a Commodore 64, taking it way back. And
wow,
yeah, I had internet in my room when I was in 8th grade because I ran a 50-foot phone cable from the phone line in the other bedroom. So I had dial-up internet in my bedroom.
I did not know that.
My dad was fully it was the early days of the internet. So what was on there? I was just searching for music on Microsoft music, Windows Media, whatever it was. But, it surprises me, like even people who are our age, now that I'm on staff with people, like we should be fairly digital natives because we might have had an analog childhood, but we had a digital adolescence and beyond. Like technology is not new for us. But there are still so many even in our age bracket who are just like, technology. And I'm like, give me all the technology. Like I straight up used AI. I use AI all the time. Chat GPT and all that kind of stuff. I love it. Anyway, it's fun. I enjoy it. But speaking of technology.
Oh, technology. Here we go.
Yeah. Y'all should like and subscribe. We are everywhere. You are hearing this. We are everywhere. Spotify. We are Apple Podcasts. We are iHeartRadio. We are a bunch of other spots.
We are YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. All the places. So like and subscribe. That really helps us out. It helps. Like the reason that liking and subscribing helps to go along with the whole social media thing. Liking and subscribing tells the YouTubes and the Spotifys and stuff that people like you like content like this. And so from other people like you, it says, hey, you might like this content because they have liked this content. So, and that affects algorithms and all that kind of good stuff. So like and subscribe. You can connect with us on social, on Instagram at We Digress with Joy_Jess. Leave comments. We could do better at posting. I'm working on that. I tell you, social media is a full-time job. It really is.
It really is.
Super is.
And we're trying to be better at it. We've been so busy, so marketing has not been where we need it to be this year. But we are hoping you're enjoying the content so far, and it'll get better.
And also, if you just want to help us out, you could also, just post for us. Wink, wink.
Post, yes.
We
can't hire you yet, but
Yeah, that's right. But you can like and share and all that fun stuff, and that would be great. Also, you can connect with us. If you have comments or thoughts about any of the things that we've talked about, we would love to hear them. You can either send us an email at podcast@joyandjess.com. That's JOIANDJESS.com. Or you can go at joyandjess.com and you can leave a voice memo, be a part of a future episode. We'd love to have that come through and chat with you about that. Leave a comment that way.
Absolutely.
If you're on Spotify, you can answer. They've got poll questions on our Spotify. So that's a fun new addition that they have made. So, yeah, it's good times.
Also, if you would like to write a book or have written a book, we offer, Divine Detour Media offers editing services. If you are looking to even copywriting or anything like that, anything in book services publishing, hit us up. Let us know. We would love to read your manuscript and see what we can do and help you with. And I think that's it.
Have a great week, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Check us out on the web at joyandjess.com. That's joyandjess.com. We'll see you next week.